Hey everybody. This morning I'm going to talk about the consequences of the um, Vaca expedition, especially when he reunites with the Spanish um, in western Mexico, today Sinaloa, near the Gulf of California. Anyway, but first, I just want to let you know that I'm going to be looking at maps, or as I talk, there'll be a map on the screen. And I know a lot of you all are listening to this on your phone, which is perfectly fine. Um, I'm gonna, when I send out the announcement about this, about this podcast or series of podcasts, I'll also post the maps that I'm looking at. Take a second to look at it. I think it would really help you understand, or really will help cement the information that I'm talking about at times anyway. So take a second, and I'll send along those links. And yeah, so as you know, Vaca and his companions, they reunite with the Spanish in what's now western Mexico. And the Spanish can't believe their eyes. That they're shocked. They can't believe that that any of the Nunez party, which was the original commander way back in Havana, that anybody had survived, much less like walked across North America. But anyway, De Vaca and his companions had. And so he's taken to Mexico City. And at this point, Mexico City is the most important city in the entire Western Hemisphere, and it's the largest city in the Western Hemisphere, which I think was true until fairly recently, at least until the 1950s. Anyway, so it's the major center of the Spanish in North America, and it's going to have Mexico City's basically going to be the capital of Texas until 1836. So when we're thinking about Texas history, we don't want to look east, which normally U.S. historians they trace their history from the Atlantic Ocean to the Pacific Ocean. But Texas history is different. Texas history flows in many cases from south to north or from north to south. So, so De Vaca is taken to Mexico City, and he meets the Spanish colonial governor in Mexico City called the Viceroy. And Viceroy, just a word that means the person in North America who rules this region for Spain. Because if you think about it, it took forever for information to go back and forth between Madrid and Mexico City. It could take months. And so the Viceroy was given quite a bit of power and had a lot of responsibility. Now, he was the Viceroy, and it was all men. If they did something that the Spanish government in Madrid didn't like, the Spanish government in Madrid would come down hard on them. But mostly, Madrid and Mexico City were on the same page, and the Viceroy, they were folks that were appointed by the government in Madrid, the Spanish capital. So they knew what was expected of them. Okay. So De Vaca ends up in Mexico City, and at this point, the Spanish have ruled Mexico City for just about 40 years, something like that. And the government officials there get very excited because De Vaca comes to Mexico City with stories of great wealth. Remember, as De Vaca had traveled this amazing journey, he had gathered around him a number of native groups, and they would tell stories about great wealth further north than where De Vaca was traveling. And so the Viceroy thought, well, this really makes sense, and it seems very plausible because of the incredible amount of wealth that the Spanish had found in Mexico and in Peru. Spain became the wealthiest nation on earth. They're just shipping out, tons and tons and tons of gold and silver and jewels back to Madrid. It's really quite extraordinary. So from the Spanish point of view, it's like, why wouldn't there be another place in North America, where there was great mineral wealth, or maybe jewels, or maybe another great civilization that the Spanish could conquer. So what happens is that the Spanish viceroy starts making moves to explore the area that De Vaca, or really north of the area that De Vaca had traveled. So what I'm talking about now is really New Mexico, Arizona, North Texas, that area. And he sends a priest named Father Deniza up into the New Mexico, Arizona area. And Deniza comes back and says, yes, there's incredible wealth there. And we, to this day, don't know what Deniza was thinking. He might have seen some of the quartz in that area that was shining in the light. Anyway, he comes back and he says, yes, De Vaca's right. There's great wealth here. And the other thing, there was this myth that the Spanish had, and it was the 7 cities of Cibola. And I'll write this down on the announcement that I send out to you. And the 7 cities of Cibola myth was this, that 7 Catholic bishops, and remember the Spanish are militant Roman Catholics, when they had left Spain in the 700s, when the Muslim world came into what's now Spain and conquered it and ruled Spain for almost 7 centuries. When the Muslim world had jumped over from North Africa, had conquered the Iberian Peninsula, that 7 Catholic bishops, as the story went, sailed west, and that they had founded cities in the West. And so it seemed plausible. Well, why not? So there's a drumbeat of activity in Mexico City. And finally, a man by the name of Francisco Vasquez de Coronado, and Coronado, if you're familiar with the military, Coronado Air Force or Naval Station, I guess it's called a naval station in San Diego. It's named after this man. He is a Spanish nobleman who has come to Mexico from Spain to seek his fortune. He was one of the younger sons of his family, and so didn't inherit much wealth. And he senses an opportunity that he's going to be the new Cortez. He's going to be the guy that finds the new wealth in the new world. And so what he does is, in 1540, in the 1540s, he pulls together an expedition. Some of this is financed by the Spanish government, but mostly it's privately financed. Coronado puts a lot of his wealth into it. And the idea is that they're going to go up into the northern region, what's now, as I say, New Mexico, Arizona, and the Panhandle of Texas, and find this wealth, find a New Mexico City. So Coronado puts together really a major expedition, which he decides to lead himself. It had 300 Spanish soldiers, always accompanied by priests. Remember, at this point, priests always accompany any kind of Spanish expedition because there's no separation between church and state, and the priests are always eager to convert any native peoples that they run into to Catholicism. And 1,000 Indians. So almost 1,500, a little less than 1,500 soldiers and Indian, mostly servants, were on this expedition that starts in 1540. And also, Coronado also brings horses, pigs, cattle, and they leave and they head north from western Mexico in 1540. And they march up through the western part of Mexico. Well, just to jump ahead and to kind of ruin the story for you, there's no gold or silver or jewels in Arizona, New Mexico, or the Panhandle of Texas. There actually is some silver kind of ish in Colorado, in that area. But that had not been mined yet. It wasn't really discovered and mined until the 1800s, 1850s, really. So the Coronado expedition, this major expedition, is a failure. But Coronado comes up, and I want to talk to him about him just a little bit more because he's interesting in the sense that he's kind of the anti-de Vaca. He has an agenda. He's trying to gain great wealth. He comes up into territory that is folks that are living there are the Zuni Pueblo tribes uh, um, of this area that had created kind of cities in the desert. If you've ever been there, they're kind of amazing. They're kind of built into the walls of this desert region. So he comes up there, and he's very frustrated because he can't find any mineral wealth. And immediately he starts killing people, torturing them, crucifying them. Coronado does. He's convinced that there's wealth and that the Indians are holding out on him. So he's not like de Vaca. He's not someone that respects Indian groups or ever sees their humanity. He's looking for gold and he's not finding it, and he's causing all kinds of trouble to the people, the Pueblo people of this area, the Zuni Pueblo tribes of this area. And so he goes up, and to his credit, he travels an incredible long way. He goes all the way from western Mexico, all the way to Kansas. Goes first into what's now Arizona, then he heads east into New Mexico, looking for one of the seven cities of Cibola, and eventually he crosses into the Panhandle of Texas and goes all the way to Kansas. So you do have to give, once again, the Spanish credit for being incredibly tough and incredibly industrious, because they're going in territory that no European has ever explored before. But on the other hand, he is killing people along the way. He's torturing them. He's convinced that they're holding out on him. So he's not very attractive in that sense.